everybody, it's Yu-Gi-Oh! Master 88 here, and welcome to my top 6 Linux distros for 2026. This is going to be my first time doing a top 6 as opposed to a top 5 because there has been um um some pretty nice Linux distros to come down the pipeline over the past few months, the past year, or for the past few years now. This is pretty much my personal top 6. If you guys have your own different top 6 Linux distros for 2026, feel free to post your top 6 in the comments down below. So anyway, folks, enough of my rambling. What do you say we get started with going from 1 to 6? So, number 1, MX Linux. MX Linux is, in my honest opinion, one of the best distros of 2026. Basically, right out of the gate, you are pretty much presented with pretty much a really, really good distro. Basically, it's pretty much a distro with like its own unique workflow, pretty much, because you pretty much have just like with my setup here, when you install MX Linux for the first time, which let me get this out of the way so I can show you all. So this is my personal MX setup right here. So as opposed to what your MX Linux setup, it could be different. You could have pretty much the bar either at the top or the bottom or the right. But for the most part, MX Linux's flagship edition gives you the XFCE desktop environment with the bar in this position. And right now I'm using pretty much a community maintained minimal version that pretty much gives you a really nice MX experience without a lot of bloat, which is how I like most of my distros these days. I don't like bloat. So basically with my setup here, you pretty much get a bar here, as I say. You get the XFC menu down here, for easy, access. You pretty much also get some MX tools if you want to do a whole bunch of things. Like if you want to do if you want to chroot into a Linux system in order to repair it, you got the chroot rescue scan. You also got the live USB kernel updater, and all sorts of these wonderful, wonderful gadgets, including if you have an NVIDIA computer, there's the driver installer right there. Very, very easy. Excuse me, I had to cough there for a minute. Anyway, as I was saying, when it comes to what else you get, with the minimal version, which is the one I use, you get the MX tools, you get some nice settings here that you can pretty much do a bit of customizing. In system, you pretty much have, all this stuff right here. You also have icon browser, and in accessories, you have some stuff here as well. What you're mostly seeing is what applications I personally use, like my lovely KeyPass XC. As well as, I also installed MinStick in mine, as well as the GNOME Disk Utility, because MX Linux does not include this by default. I have to install this. I also got Edo Pro, just simple Edo Pro. And this is and instead of Firefox, I removed Firefox from my machine and I installed Brave Origin. This, folks, I'm gonna have a dedicated video later on about this browser, so stay tuned. This is my favorite web browser right now. It is so, so good. To give you a little bit a bit about Brave Origin, it's Brave Origin, but it doesn't have bloat in it. It is very debloated, and that's what I like in pretty much in either a Linux distro or basically any free and open source software application. If there's minimal to no bloat, it's a good application. I like that. And other than that, this is pretty much what I use every single day. This is pretty much the famous YouTube production machine, by the way, that I always usually record. If I'm not recording on this, it's the second YouTube production machine, which is the famous mid 2012 MacBook Pro, which is also running MX Linux too. But no, MX Linux is very easy to navigate, very easy to get used to. Sure, having the panel in this position, it's gonna present to itself as a very unique workflow. But if you're coming from either Windows or Mac OS, it shouldn't be that difficult to get used to this unique workflow because honestly, folks, I really like this workflow quite a bit. Having the bar over here, having all my applications where I want them, easy access to the menu. It's a wonderful way to do pretty much everyday computing, pretty much. And basically, this is why I love MX so much, is for the XFCE edition, whether it's the full version or the minimal version that the community maintains, which they maintain the minimal version, just so you know, um, you pretty much get this bar formation, which I really like this a lot because I feel like having the bar over here gives you access to a wider area to where you can have your applications, even multiple applications as well. So yeah, that's pretty much my take on MX Linux and why it's pretty much number one on the list because it is so simple and so easy to get used to. And if you don't like XFCE for whatever reason, you when you go to the download button here on the MX Linux site, you pretty much have access to two other flavors, either KDE or Fluxbox. KDE is pretty much, for all intents and purposes, the Linux desktop environment equivalent to pretty much Windows 10 essentially. That's pretty much where I put KDE 6 is it's pretty much the Windows 10 of the Linux world. Whereas with XFCE, for all intents and purposes, it's a much older environment. So I would put it in the same area as Windows XP, Windows 7, or even far back as Windows 98. Just saying. But anyway, MX Linux is my number one on my list. It is amazing. It's good. It's stable as a frickin' rock. It's based off of Debian. The latest Debian 13 Trixie, by the way. So you're going to have a really solid distro if you choose this. It's wonderful. So that's pretty much MX Linux in a nutshell. Next up is Linux Mint Mate. Now, this is the Linux Mint website, which I'll show to which, by the way, for this for these distro for this top 6 Linux distros for 2026 for the first time, I will show the website, which I didn't do before. So basically, this is the home of basically anything Linux Mint. If you're wondering how to get to the Mate version, it's right down here. So basically, this here is a photo of Linux Mint Mate, which I will bring the photo up if it'll let me. I don't know if it will. Yeah, it's not gonna pretty much, bring it up, but that's okay. Oh, wait. Hold on, I think it's trying to. It, if you're wondering, folks, I'm using Brave Origin. It's a debloated version of Brave. You can get it free on Linux in any distro you can imagine. But if you're on Windows or Mac OS, you unfortunately have to pay the fee in order to unlock the Mac OS and Windows versions. So, anyway, yeah, it's taken way too long for this. Let's just, there we go. Okay, so what we're going to do, folks, we're going to do it this way. So, let me just do it like that. There we go. So as you can see right here, this right here is what pretty much Linux Mint Mate would look like. I know it's a little blurry, but bear with me. You pretty much get this nice environment here with the Mate desktop environment, as well as Linux Mint's own take on the Mate menu, which it pretty much looks like Windows 10 for the most part. You can make the Mate menu look a little bit more unique if you want to. But the Windows look and feel is pretty much what Mate is going for the most part. It's trying to basically get those Windows users, which is the whole purpose of why Mate solely exists, is to basically be a transition for Windows users to go from Windows to Linux. And it's one of the best desktop environments for a transition like that. It really is. But when it comes to the to Linux Mint Mate, it's fast, it's stable. I have no problems with it at all. Um, my main YouTube production machine that you see right here has is pretty much going. It is pretty much a multi-boot system. MX Linux is not the only system on this computer. There's pretty much 5 other distros that I can tap into um, when I reboot my machine and I go to the MX Linux grub screen, because I have a special um, custom file located in my grub.d sector of my Etsy area, to where I can pretty much modify it to what distros I want. This way, when I reboot back into the MX Linux Grub, it'll show me what um, boot entries I have for the Linux distros that are on my YouTube production machine, such as, MX Linux, as well as Linux Mint Mate, as well as various others as well. But the cool thing I like about Linux Mint Mate specifically is, unlike Cinnamon, I would say the Mate edition is a little bit more um um let me think, how do I want to say this? I would say, compared to Cinnamon, the Mate edition pretty much does a really good job at helping Windows users switch over to Linux. Because when it comes to switching from Windows or Mac OS to Linux, the biggest obstacle is figuring out, like, what cross compatible platform software that you have on Windows, will that software work on Linux? Which, one thing about free and open source software is 9 times out of 10 it's cross-platform. So if it works on Windows, it's going to work on Linux, no problem. So that's just pretty much my little 2 cents on that. But no, there's really not much else to say about Linux Mint Mate. It's number 2 on my list, and it's rock solid, stable. Um, if you pretty much want a version of Linux Mint Mate, but for newer hardware, you have this little option right here to get yourself an ISO if you want to. So that's pretty much Linux Mint Mate in a nutshell. Next up is Zorin OS. This is number 3 on my list. Zorin OS is one of the distros that I've absolutely loved over the years. I've basically bounced around amongst many different Linux distros, and I've always come back to this one specifically. Reason being is the normal version, which has a modified GNOME setup. Um, while the GNOME setup has gotten much better to use over the years, I've actually really liked the Zorn OS Lite version a little bit better, and for good reason. The reason why I like Zorn OS Lite is because for the most part, Zorn OS Lite is XFCE based and not GNOME based. And when it comes to GNOME's track record on working on my hardware, it's gotten better, but I prefer the XFCE version. So, if you want to know where to locate the Zorn OS Lite version, all you have to do is just scroll down to the main download page. You can get it right there. And basically, the Zorn OS Lite, it's going to be pretty much fully supported and maintained until 2029. So, mm, basically, as of 2029, they'll be pretty much doing away with the light version. So by then, hopefully, the GNOME version will be a lot more improved to where it can be good on not just new hardware, but legacy hardware as well. But the cool thing I like about Zorn OS, though, when it comes to being a former Windows power user like myself, besides MX Linux and Linux Mint Mate, if there was one other distro that I could get behind and say that a Windows user would love this, it would be Zorn OS, because it's very Windows user friendly. And right out of the box, it has a nice Windows like workflow that you can easily work and navigate in. Plus, the cool thing is right out of the box, you get an option to install the Windows application emulator called Wine. Which, if you don't know what Wine is, it means Wine is not an emulator. And the thing about Wine, and I can't stress this enough, and I know I'm bouncing around different things, but bear with me. Wine can be really good in some situations. If there's certain Windows software that you're wanting to get to work on Linux, Wine can help you do that. Say if it's like a really basic piece of Windows software, like, let me think here. Say if you want to get like either a certain music player or a video player, or for example, Adobe Photoshop, for example. Wine can help you get those certain pieces of Windows software working. In fact, when it comes to basically Adobe Photoshop specifically, there have been many attempts over the years to get Adobe Photoshop working, and it's been incredible seeing the community trying to get this one piece of software working that, a lot of Windows users use for various work related stuff, like Adobe Photoshop is used for art projects, movie projects, presentations, you name it, Adobe Photoshop can do it. You can make literally anything you want in Photoshop. But some really cool alternatives to Photoshop have come up over the years, such as now, um, GIMP. GIMP is a wonderful replacement for Photoshop, as well as Inkscape, of course. So, when it comes to getting Windows software working on Linux, there are wonderful alternatives to some Windows-related software, like, GIMP as well as Inkscape, for example. But anyway, I will say another thing about Zorn OS that's really cool as well is right out of the box, you pretty much get everything you need in order to get your real work done. You get a web browser, you get an Office suite, you pretty much get LibreOffice, which is, in my opinion, the best alternative to Microsoft Office, bar none. I mean, sure, Microsoft Office can still do some stuff better, but LibreOffice is getting there. I say within the next 5 to 10 years, LibreOffice is going to make Microsoft Office obsolete. I guarantee it. But anywho, when it comes to getting a Windows user to switch to Linux, this is a there's a whole bunch of reasons why Zorn OS is number 3 on my list, because this is one of the easiest distros to switch a Windows user to, because it'll be familiar, they'll be able to get the hang of it, and Firefox is one of the biggest browsers on the market right now, and a lot of people use Firefox. A lot of people also use other browsers too, like Google Chrome, Brave, Chromium. The list goes on and on. So, yeah, like I just said a few seconds ago, there's many reasons why why Zorn OS is number 3 on my list, and that is it's one of the best distros to switch a Windows user to. Plain and simple. Anyway, number 4 on my list. Oh wait, yeah, no, yeah, number 4 on my list when it comes to my top 6 Linux distros for 2026 is a distro that hasn't been on my top 6 list or my top 5 list in a very, very severely long time. And that's Ubuntu Mate. Ubuntu Mate many years ago was one of my top 5 distros, but there was some issues with Ubuntu Mate in the past, and I had to take it off my list for a long while. Well, now that Ubuntu Mate is under new ownership and new developers, I gave it pretty much a new chance recently. And I must say, folks, Ubuntu Mate may not have a 26.04 ISO, but I did find, but with the help of AI, I pretty much was able to get it upgraded via terminal to 26.04 LTS that way. And I must say, the last few days of me toying around with Ubuntu Mate here and there, I have grown to like Ubuntu Mate again, especially since I downloaded a minimal ISO to start. And then what I did was, since I didn't like Snap Package, I ripped snaps out, and now it's just simple app packages, just like how it used to be. Um, it's not that I have a hatred for snaps or flat packages. It's just I prefer app packages, in-system packages. It's just easier for me. And plus, when it comes to snaps, the only gripe I have about snaps, honestly, is the fear of, malware getting into them so easily compared to Flatpak, which Flatpaks are a little bit more secure in my opinion. But anyway, over the past few days, up to a week now, I've been experimenting here and there with Ubuntu Mate 26.04. It is amazing. The Mate dev team has done a fantastic job getting it ready. Even though there's not an official ISO for it yet, there will be a Mate ISO coming in October when 26.10 releases. So keep a lookout for a distro review on that when that releases. But it bugged me a little bit, folks, that Ubuntu Mate 26.04 didn't get an ISO. It bummed me a little bit, but at least through some research, I was able to get it via terminal commands, which is how I got 24.04, which is what I started with, which was the minimal ISO, by the way, and then upgraded to 26.04 LTS. So that's how I did it. But Ubuntu Mate is such a fantastic desktop to use. For starters, you got the nice panel up top. You got the nice little menu up top as well. And the menu is so easy to navigate. You also got your bottom panel as well with the workspace switcher I like so much, as well as the little show desktop button here. Ubuntu Mate, out of all the Ubuntu flavors, with the exception of Unity, which still has a dear place in my heart, Mate, in my opinion, is the best one, and it's all because of simplicity, pretty much. I like the Mate desktop environment compared to GNOME, because Mate just reminds me of the old GNOME 2 days, which I unfortunately wasn't a Linux user at that time, but I grown a lot of respect for, what GNOME 2 was, and how Mate is pretty much the best successor for said environment like GNOME 2. And honestly, there's really not much else I can say about Ubuntu Mate. It's fast, it's stable. You get the nice welcome screen once you fully install. Um, and that's pretty much all I gotta say about that. Ubuntu Mate is one of my top 6, and for good reason. It is so easy to get a Windows or a Mac OS user to switch to this, and they'll be happy. I guarantee it. Next up, Debian. So, this is straight Debian. But, if you want a Windows or a Mac OS user to switch to this a little bit easier, click Other Downloads. And the one I recommend is this one right here, the XFCE version. These ISOs here offer an alternative installer called the Calamaris installer, which is a much easier installer, in my opinion, compared to the normal Debian installer. The normal Debian installer can be a bit confusing, but I mean, if you just read the instructions, I'm pretty certain that anybody can figure it out. But if you just don't want to, deal with that type of installer, I would recommend downloading the Live XFCE ISO and using the Calamaris installer that's built into the ISO to install Debian that way. Debian, compared to Arch, in my opinion, is one of, if not one of the most stable, rock solid distros I've ever had the privilege to use for my daily use. It is wonderful. I mean, it's one of the oldest surviving distros for a very good reason, because it's got the community, it's got the funds, and it's backed by so many computer companies. Like, I mean, a lot of people rely on Debian for many different use cases, whether it's to make their own Debian-based distro, like MX Linux, of course, or you can use Debian to make a server, or basically use Debian as a blueprint for basically setting up your own personal gaming machine. A lot of cool things can be done with Debian, and it's pretty much number 5 on my list because of the rock solid stability Debian provides. It is not going to bork. It is not going to just, fall over and play dead. Debian's not going to do that. It is, in my opinion, not only one of the best distros I've ever had the chance to use, but it's one of the oldest surviving ones, dating back all the way to 1993. That's a long time. But anyway, folks, if you want a good distro, I recommend, like I said before, I'll demonstrate this one more time. You go to other downloads, you can get the live XFCE ISO, or if you want something that's going to be a little bit more fancy, you can get the KDE ISO, which KDE 6 is a wonderful environment. Check it out. Anyway, on to the final distro. Number 6, Linux Lite. This distro over time has become one of my favorites, and for good reason. Back in 2020, when Windows 7 expired, Linux Lite stepped up to the plate, and they helped a lot of Windows 7 users transfer over to Linux. Linux Lite, in my opinion, and I've said this from the very beginning, it is, in my opinion, the Windows 7 of Linux. Because, I mean, if you look, let me see if I can find a picture of Linux Lite for you guys, so this way you can see what I mean. Okay. Picture, 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 picture. There we go. This'll do it. So this is pretty much what Linux Lite looks like. You got your clock here, you got your system tray here, you got your workspace switcher here. You got a nice little quick item menu here, your show desktop menu here, and your menu here. To most people, when they look at this, they're going to pretty much think it looks like Windows, which it does. That was their intention. Like I said, when Windows 7 expired in 2020, Linux Lite stepped up to the plate and got Windows 7 users to transfer over to their distro. And there's a good reason as to why, because it is pretty much a Windows 7 like workflow. You get excellent applications, it's stable, it's fast, it's reliable, and there's really not much else I can say about that other than Linux Lite is number 6 on my list because it's reliable, it's stable, it works out of the box. It's wonderful. They even have their own package installer, which you can get selected packages from. And you get LibreOffice, which is the best alternative to Microsoft Office, bar none. So that's pretty much all I can really say about Linux Lite. If you want to download it, you can pretty much download the latest version from right here. If you want to download its torrent, you can. But just so you know, it's going to be 2.36 gigabytes. So depending on your internet, you may be waiting for a little bit. But but one more thing I want to touch up on before we wrap things up here is look at these system requirements here. At minimum, you just need a 1.5 gigahertz dual core processor, 4 gigs of memory, 40 gigabytes of storage on either an HDD, an SSD, or an NVMe. And that's really all you need in order to get this thing going. This thing can run on legacy hardware as well as new hardware. It doesn't matter. As long as you have something that has 4 gigs of RAM, you're golden. You're good to go. My recommendation personally, between 4 and 8 gigabytes of RAM should be sufficient for, normal, casual, everyday computing, such as checking your email, surfing the web, watching YouTube, just the normal stuff. If it's if you pretty much got to do projects and all that stuff, my opinion would be to at least go for 8 gigs of RAM, just so you know you have enough memory to get a lot of work done. But anyway, folks, that is pretty much my top 6 Linux distros for 2026. I will be doing another top 6 at some point in time. Don't know when, but keep an eye out for that. Anyway, folks, I thank you all so much for watching. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoy these just as much as we all do, then smash that like button, ring a ding that notification bell, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you. And enjoy more content to come on this channel. It's gonna be one heck of a ride, folks. But anyway, this is Yu-Gi-Oh! Master 88 saying see you later.